Okay, this lesson for the Koine Project Class would like to demonstrate that the dichotomy, young versus old earth, is actually a false dichotomy. The rationale for it, not the definitive, unassailable proof for that assertion, rather the rationale is that there are believers who are scientists who hold to an old earth, quote, old earth view. There are believers who are scientists who hold to a young Earth view, even astrophysicists and whatever all that is. So, among scientists who are believers in the broadest category, they believe the Bible, they obviously don't collaborate to produce a view from which no contradiction appears. So, to a lower degree of difficulty, not a lower degree of importance, but difficulty, there are believing Bible scholars, scholastics, who hold to old earth view, and then there are believing Bible scholars that hold to young earth view. And of course, collaboration has not yet occurred or is still a work in process that will eventually result in a product that's greater than the sum of its parts and demonstrates there is no contradiction, so that, as the seminary professor, hermeneutics professor of the seminary, Dr. Penn, said, he was neither young or old earth, and he meant whatever old earthism and that construct is, and then young earthism, whatever that is, he preferred to be neither. So that was quite, well, it's a thought provoking thing. So let's look at some text, and then let's look at instantaneity, and let's look at some things that will absolutely prevent us from simply reducing this to young or old, similar to the old, worn out, tired, now put away dichotomy that's now called a false dichotomy. Either God is sovereign or man has free will. Since a sovereign God created man causal, it's really nothing to discuss there. So in Psalm 90, that's the clue there, 90, we learn that 90% of 100% of humanity, of 100% mankind, 90% of all mankind's lifespan was removed. So we are dying 10 times faster. So if you think there's urgency for someone to believe Christ for everlasting life, then just take that urgency times 10, or just make it u to the 10th. So that's quite alarming. It's something that should interest all of us, because Psalm 90 teaches us to number our days, count our days. So now let's look at Psalm 148, 5. And let's look at the B section. A is a command to praise God, ye heavens and the waters above the heavens. And here it says, because, I'll put an ellipse here, because, that's a conjunction there. And this is a independent preposition, personal pronoun, sorry. Who, and it says he himself. So he himself, and it says, because he himself, and then we'll go to the verb here, and it's see, here we go. Siba. It's a double middle radical. That means it doubles this Bob. Bob. So it's intensive. So this is a PL, staying true to our discipline, perfect third masculine singular. And since this is emphasis here, personal pronoun, and this is intensive stem, he himself personally, let's just say it that way, personally commanded. So we've emphasized it by taking the emphasis of he himself, exclusively personally commanded. And then let's go back to our simple a simple verb now, the nifal. It's the simple passive form. So we have a conjunction and, remember we're going this direction obviously, and so b'ni, here's the noon in nifal, b'ni, then we have b'ni, yeah. So in the strong form, when we learn katal, it'd be niktal. So we have niv, ra. Yeah, here we go. Niv. So b'ni, bira. There we go. Bira. And then we have this ending here. Ooh. So this is third common plural. They. This is simple passive. So they were created. Created. So this would be what we had learned. We'd say instantaneity. So we have omnipotence, and we have it defined with no greater expression than instantaneity. So done instantly. And what we'll now notice is recall that when some function, we were talking about limits, which we'll just use it as an illustration, but a limit as x approaches infinity, 1 over x, that equals 0. Well, we'll notice something quite remarkable as we did something so self-evident. So as we increased x, we're going to take it, God's infinite, he's omnipotent, all-powerful, whole sway over all things. So we noticed that when x was 10, it was 0.1, so 0.1 when x is 10, and when x was 100, that equaled 0.01, so 100th, and here x equals 1,000, equaled 0.001. So what we noticed was as x increases, so as x increases, the number 1 over x, the number decreases. And eventually, as we've noticed, let's observe this, that we will get to 0 long before we get to the infinite expression of God's power. So therefore, we can say that as this happens, it decreases, that's why it will equal 0, no time transpired, no energy lost, 0 time, and in one way, there's a remainder of infinity. So since he's immutable, which by definition, anything eternal is immutable, doesn't change, we now notice that not only did he do it without any time transpiring and no loss of energy, but that we have a remainder. We get to 0 and we have a remainder of infinite power. So that's why God is unchanged. And in Genesis 1:1, which is what this event represents, this is Genesis 1:1. And we've studied before and gone over this extensively. It's just that how is it that scientists who are both, they're believing scientists, and both among believing scientists, they hold opposing views, young or old. And among believing scholastics, they hold opposing view, young or old. And even some have switched from, the leading professor still serving in the seminary, hermeneutics that is, and about to become one of the longest serving in history. He was once, I think, young earth, of course, as we all were before you attend the seminary. Then you learn there, and then you learn about the interval between 1:1 and 1:2 of Genesis. You learn about what they call the gap theory or different versions of it. He went from gap fact to now move toward gap fiction, just to show that if among Bible scholars there's young and old adherents, and among Bible scientific community, believing scientific community, they hold the same thing. So now if we bring in this fact here of instantaneity, which is the epitome and the highest expression, and how would you define it? Speaking as a quantum creationist. And then we remember the ratio. So we remember there was a 6 to 20,000 range among those who are identified as young earthers range. That's chronological time, chronos time. So we started with approximately 6,250 at a 12-hour day, just as Dr. Penn made it very clear. It was so obvious, which is often why we miss things. Then 6,250 years at 12-hour night. And this gave us our approximately 12,500 chronological years at 24 hours total. And then, of course, because we had a conversion factor, we had a 1 day to 1,000 years, and we had 1,000 years to 1 day. And of course, we notice that's a multiplicative inverse. So let's just say this is our conversion factor. So we take the 12,500 years, chronological years. This is a chronological time. Now, you remember that did not exist in the first verse. That was much later time. There we go. Now let's go this way. Recognize our conversion factor and then take the 12,500 times 360-day year. This is something even the children in our Sunday school at Landmark do this, and we've even got videos of some of them. 360-day year, that equals 4.5 million days. So we have our days in our ratio. So we'll multiply that by 1,000 years. That equals 4.5 billion. And why this falls into place very well is because this is geological decay. And Dr. Penn is careful. I go back even now over files and things and review even video interviews. And he was noticing what can often be missed because, remember, he's retired. He's been away from it. He's now immersed himself into research, and he has Dr. Johnson, Eddie Johnson, and me working as research assistants. So it's collaboration, and it's geological decay. Well, then if we continue with our research here, we go 4.5, bring that down here, and multiply it. Now we're going to go from 1,000 years. We're going to go back now, because 1,000 years is like a day, so we're going to convert back to days. So these billion years, we want to convert back to days. So now 1,000 days is approximately 2.78, 360-day year. There we go. And that equaled the 12.5 billion, what we call the let's just say the amount of geological decay. That will help. For example, scientists wouldn't disagree with any of this because it would be so self-evident. And then you remember we had no one live outside the 1,000-year time period, and that word yom in the Bible for day means A, time, and then B, day. So what we have is, until we had referential time, chronological time, which was given for man, there was no referential or chronological time between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. That would help both perspectives, young and old, because both are contributing if you're just willing to collaborate. When you can't collaborate, we can do what we do in this class. We take all the contributions, we take and evaluate both sides, and then look for an outcome greater than the sum of its parts. And that's what we've done here. So that we've noticed no one lived outside that 1,000-year day, and now we live approximately 100 years, which we consider it so remarkable that we place it all over the news, and we go and visit that special relative. I remember going and visiting a man, and I took a coin to him that was 100 years old. So here, I'll get out of the way. You can see your board there and notice how efficient this was, but that's enough to demonstrate that it's a false dichotomy, young versus old.